CPE 102, the teacher and the community, school culture, and organizational leadership. Philosophical thoughts on education, isolated facts and the banking method, depicting in the question and answer proceeding in class or a common classroom scenario. Most lessons are devoted to teacher asking low-level questions and students answer with what they memorized the night before. Teacher deposits these facts a day before and withdraws them the next day. The banking system of education does not make the learner reflect and connect what was taught to real life. We have nothing against facts, but isolated facts make no sense but become meaningful when seen in relation with other facts. These facts, when combined with other facts, help the learner see the meaning and connection to life. Number 1. John Locke, 1632 to 1704. The empiricist educator. Acquire knowledge about the world through the senses, learning by doing and by interacting with the environment. Simple ideas become more complex through comparison, reflection, and generalization. The inductive method. Question the long traditional view that the knowledge came exclusively from literary sources, particularly the Greek and Latin classics. Oppose the divine right of kings, theory which held that the monarch had the right to be an unquestioned and absolute ruler over his subject. Political order should be based upon a contract between the people and the government. Aristocrats are not destined by birth to be rulers. People were to establish their own government and select their own political leaders from among themselves. Civic education is necessary. People should be educated to govern themselves intelligently and responsibly. Number 2. Herbert Spencer, 1820 to 1903. Utilitarian education. Spencer's concept, survival of the fittest, means that human development have gone through an evolutionary series of stages from the simple to the complex and from the uniform to the more specialized kind of activity. Social development had taken place according to the evolutionary process by which simple homogeneous societies evolved to more complex and societal systems. Characterized with humanistic and classical, industrialized society requires vocational and professional education based on scientific and practical objectives rather on the very general education goals associated with humanistic and classical education. Curriculum should be emphasized the practical, utilitarian, and scientific subject that helped humankind master the environment. Was not inclined to rote learning. Schooling must be related to life and to the activities needed to earn a living. Curriculum must be arranged according to their contribution to human survival and progress. Science and other subjects that sustain human life and prosperity should have curricular priority since it aids in the performance of life activities. Individual competition leads to social progress. He who is fittest survives. Ornstein, 1984. Number 3. John Dewey, 1859 to 1962. Learning through experience. Education is a social process, and so school is intimately related to the society that it serves. Children are socially active human beings who want to explore their environment and gain control over it. Education is a social process by which the immature members of the group, especially the children, are brought to participate in the society. The school is a special environment established by members of the society for the purpose of simplifying, purifying, and integrating the social experience of the group so that it can be understood, examined, and used by its children. The sole purpose of education is to contribute to the personal and social growth of individuals. The steps of the scientific or reflective method, which are extremely important in Dewey's education theory. The fund of knowledge of the human race, past ideas, discoveries, and invention was to be used as the material for dealing with problems. This accumulated wisdom of cultural heritage has to be tested if it serves human purposes. It becomes part of a reconstructed experience. The school is a social, scientific, and democratic. The school introduces children to society and their heritage. The school as a miniature society is a means of bringing children into social participation. The school is a scientific in the sense that it is a social laboratory in which children and youth could test their ideas and values in here. The learner acquires the disposition and procedures associated with scientific and reflective thinking and act. The school is democratic because the learner is free to test all ideas, beliefs, and values. Cultural heritage, customs, and institutions are all subject to critical inquiry, investigation, and reconstruction. School should be used by all. It being a democratic institution, no barrier, custom, or prejudice segregates people. People ought to work together to solve common problems. The authoritarian or coercive style of administration and teaching is out of place because they block genuine inquiry and dialogue. Education is a social activity, and the school is a social agency that helps shape human character and behavior. Values are relative but sharing. Cooperation and democracy are significant human values that should be encouraged by schools. Ornstein, 1984. Number 4. George Counts, 1889 to 1974. Building a New Social Order. Education is not based on eternal truth but is relative to a particular society living at a given time and space. By allying themselves with groups that want to change society, schools should cope with social change that arises from technology. There is a cultural lag between material progress and social institutions and ethical values. Instructions should incorporate a content of socially useful nature and a problem-solving methodology. Schools become an instrument for school improvement rather than an agency for preserving the status quo. Teachers should lead society rather than follow it. Teachers are agents of change. Teachers are called on to make important choices in the controversial areas of economics, politics, and morality because if they fail to do so, others would make the decisions for them. Schools ought to provide an education that affords equal learning opportunities to all students. Number 5. Theodore Brummel, 1904 to 1987. Social Reconstructionism. As the name implies, social reconstructionism is a philosophy that emphasizes the reformation of society. So, the social reconstructionist asserts that schools should critically examine present culture and resolve inconsistencies, controversies, and conflicts to build a new society, not just change society. Technological era is an era of interdependence, and so education must be international in scope for global citizenship. For the social reconstructionist, education is designed to awaken students' consciousness about social problems and to engage them actively in problem solving. Social reconstructionists are firmly committed to equality or equity in both society and education. Barriers of socio-economic class and racial discrimination should be eradicated. They also emphasize the idea of independent world. The quality of life needs to be considered and enhanced on a global basis. Ornstein, 1984. Number 6. Paulo Freire, 1921 to 1997. Critical Pedagogy. Critical Pedagogy and Dialogue versus the Banking Model of Education. Paulo Freire, a critical theorist, like social reconstructionists, believed that system must be changed to overcome oppression and improve human conditions. Education and literacy are the vehicles for social change. In his view, humans must learn to resist oppression and not become its victims, nor oppress others. To do so requires dialogue and critical consciousness, the development of awareness to overcome domination and oppression, rather than teaching as banking, in which the educator deposits information into students' heads. Freire saw teaching and learning as a process of inquiry in which the children must invent and reinvent the world. Teachers must not see themselves as the sole possessors of knowledge and their students as empty receptacles. He calls his pedagogical approach the banking method of education. A democratic relationship between the teacher and her students is necessary in order for the conscientization process to take place. Freire's critical pedagogy is a problem-solving education. A central element of Freire's pedagogy is dialogue. It is love and respect that allow us to engage people in dialogue and to discover ourselves in the process and learn from one another. Dialogue means the presence of equality, mutual recognition, affirmation of people, a sense of solidarity with people, and remaining open to questions. Dialogue is the basis for critical and problem-posing pedagogy. as opposed to banking education, where there is no discussion, only the imposition of the teacher's ideas on the students. Ornstein, 1984.
Historical foundation of education. Socialization is the process of learning the roles, statuses, and values necessary for participation in social institutions, according to Brinkerhoff, 1989. It is a lifelong process that occurs primarily during early childhood, but as we progress from infancy to old age, we shed old roles and adopt new ones. Role learning that prepares us for future roles is termed anticipatory socialization. Because of anticipatory socialization, most of us are more or less prepared for our future roles like spouse, parent, or professional teacher. The family is the most important agent of socialization. Psychology tells us that the self-concept formed during childhood has lasting consequences. Besides, the parent's religion, social class, and ethnicity influences the child's social roles and self-concept, which in turn influence the expectations that others have for the child, and they determine the groups with which the child will interact outside the family. The school is also an important agent of socialization. It is an institution charged by society to impart specific knowledge and skills necessary for functioning in a society. They are also charged with the task of transmitting society's cultural values. Schools, formal or informal, do their task as agents of socialization in the different periods of history. Education in primitive society. Brinkerhoff, 1989, explains further. In primitive societies, preliterate persons faced the problem of survival in an environment that pitted them against natural forces and wild animals. To survive, human beings needed food, shelter, warmth, and clothing. To transform a hostile environment into one that is life-sustaining, humankind developed life skills that eventually became cultural patterns. These life skills included 1. Tool or instrument making, 2. Adherence to the moral behavior code of group life, and 3. Language. Early humankind found security in group life based on kinship and tribal patterns. Life in the human group was educational as children observed and learned from the elders and as they were deliberately taught by their parents and elders. For these cultural patterns to continue, the adults had to teach these skills and values to their children. This socialization, a function of education in society. Socialization is the process by which individuals internalize the norms and values of society, and so social and cultural continuity are attained. This is also informal education in action. As abstract thinkers, human beings could create, use, and manipulate symbols. These could communicate with one another through gestures, sounds, and words. These symbols were expressed as signs, pictographs, and letters. The creation and introduction of oral and written language made a great leap on literacy, which in turn had tremendous educational consequences which citizens of a civilized society like netizens of the 21st century enjoy. Key periods in educational history: 1000 BC to AD 1600. Historical group or period: primitive societies, 7000 BC up to 5000 BC. To teach group survival skills, to cultivate group cohesiveness. For the curriculum, practical skills of hunting, fishing, food gathering, stories, myths, songs, poems, and dances. The agents are the parents, tribal elders, and priests. Influences on Western education, emphasis on the role of informal education in transmission of skills and values. For the Greek historical group or period, 1600 BC up to 300 BC. Educational goals: to cultivate civic responsibility and identity with city-state. Athenian, to develop well-rounded person. Spartan, to develop soldiers and militarity leaders. Curriculum: Athenian, reading, writing, arithmetic, drama, music, physical education, literature, and poetry. For the Spartans, drill, military, songs, and tactics. For the Aegeans, the Athens are private teachers and schools, sophists, philosophers. For the Sparta are the military teachers, drill, and surgeon. Influences on Western education. For the Athens, the concept of well-rounded, liberally educated person. For the Sparta, the concept of military state. For the Roman period, 750 BC up to AD 450, to develop sense of civic responsibility for republic and then empire, to develop administrative and military skills. Reading, writing, laws of 12 tables, law, philosophy. Private schools and teachers, schools of rhetoric. Emphasis on ability to use education for practical administrative skills relating education to civic responsibility. For the period of Arabic, AD 700 up to AD 1350. To cultivate religious commitment to Islamic beliefs, to develop expertise in mathematics, medicine, and science. Reading, writing, mathematics, religious, literature, scientific studies. Mosques, court schools. Arabic numerals and computation, re-entry of classical materials in science and medicine. For the medieval period, AD 500 up to AD 1400, to develop religious commitment, knowledge, and ritual, to re-establish social order, to prepare persons for appropriate roles. Reading, writing, arithmetic, liberal arts, philosophy, theology, crafts, military tactics, and chivalry. Parish, chantry, and cathedral schools, universities, apprentices, knighthood. Establishing the structure, content, and organization of the university as a major institution of higher education. The institutionalization and preservation of knowledge. Renaissance period up to AD 1350 to AD 1500. To cultivate a humanist who was expert in the classics, Greek and Latin, to prepare courtiers for service to dynastic leaders. Latin, Greek, classical literature, poetry, and art. Classical humanist educators and schools such as Lice, Gymnasium, Latin Grammar School. An emphasis on literary knowledge, excellence, and style as expressed in classical literature. A two-track system of school. The period of Reformation, AD 1500 up to AD 1600. To cultivate a sense of commitment to a particular religious denomination, to cultivate general literacy. Reading, writing, arithmetic, catechism, religious concepts, and ritual. Latin and Greek theology. Vernacular elementary schools for the masses, classical schools for the upper classes, a commitment to universal education to provide literacy to the masses, the origins of school systems with supervision to ensure doctrinal conformity. The history of the Philippine educational system. Education during the pre-colonial period. Education was informal and unstructured and decentralized. Fathers taught their sons how to look for food and other means of livelihood. Mothers taught their girls to do the household chores. This education basically prepared their children to become good husbands and wives. Children were provided more vocational training but lesser academics. Teachers were tribal tutors or the babaylan and gatalunan. Number 2, education during the Spanish era. Education was formal and organized. It was authoritarian in nature. Tribal tutors of the pre-Spanish period were replaced by Spanish missionaries. Pupils attended formal schooling in the parochial school. Instruction was religion-oriented. Christian doctrines, sacred songs, and music and prayers were taught because they were required for confession and communion. There was a separate school for boys and girls, and wealthy Filipinos or the ilustradors were accommodated in the school.
Number 3, the Educational Decree of 1863. This law gave Filipinos a complete system of education from elementary to collegiate level. The law provided for the establishment of the elementary schools in all municipalities in the country. Although religion was the core of the curriculum included subjects reading, writing, arithmetic, history, Christian doctrine, Spanish language, vocal music, and agriculture for boys, and needlework for the girls. Attendance in the school was compulsory between ages 7 to 12. Number 4, education during the American regime, 1898 to 1946. The Americans promoted democratic ideas and democratic way of life. The school maintained by the Spaniards for more than 3 centuries were closed, but reopened on August 29, 1898 by the Secretary of the Interior. A system of free and compulsory elementary education was established by the Malolos Constitution, Political Constitution of 1899. In May 1898, the first American school was established in Corregidor, and shortly after the capture of Manila in 1999, 7 schools were opened in the city. Training was done through schools, both public and secular, manned by chaplains and military officers of the U.S. Army. Thomasites arrived in the Philippines in August 23, 1901. The University of the Philippines was founded in 1908. UP was the first state school of university status. The Department of Public Instruction set up the three-level school system. The first level considered a 4-year primary and 3-year intermediate or 7-year elementary curriculum. Second level was a 4-year junior college and later a 4-year program. Number 5, the Commonwealth period from 1935 to 1942. Free education in public schools was provided all over the country in accordance to the 1935 Constitution. Vocational education and some household activities like sewing, cooking, and farming were also given importance. Education also emphasized nationalism, so the students were taught about the life of the Filipino heroes. Vocational education and some household activities were also given importance. Good manners and discipline were taught to the students. The institution of private education was established in order to observe private schools. Formal adult education was also given. In the Executive Order number 134 of 1936 was signed by President Manuel L. Quezon, designing Tagalog as our national language. Executive Order number 217, otherwise known as the Quezon Code of Ethics, was taught in schools. Executive Order number 263 in 1940 required the teaching of Filipino national language in the senior year of all high school and all years in the normal schools. The Educational Act of 1940, Constitutional Act 586, was approved by the Philippine Assembly on August 7, 1940, which provided for the following: reduction of the 7-year elementary course to 6 years, fixing the school entrance age at 7, national support for elementary education, compulsory attendance of primary children enrolled in grade 1, adoption of double single sessions in the primary grade with one teacher, one class assignment of intermediate teachers. Number 6, the Japanese occupation. The aims of the education during the Japanese occupation is to make the people understand the position of the Philippines as a member of the East Asia co-prosperity sphere, eradication of the idea and reliance upon Western states, particularly the US and Great Britain, fostering a new Filipino culture based on the consciousness of the people as Orientals, elevating the morals of the people, giving up overemphasis on materialism, diffusion of elementary education and promotion of vocational education, striving for diffusion of the Japanese language in the Philippines, and the termination of the use of English in schools, developing in the people the love for labor. Number 7, post-colonial Philippines. Education aimed at the full of realization of the democratic ideas and way of life. The civil service eligibility of teachers was made permanent pursuant to Republic Act 1078 in June 15, 1954. A daily flag ceremony was made compulsory in all schools, including the singing of national anthem pursuant RA 1265 approved in June 11, 1955. Curricular offerings in all schools, the life, the works, and the writings of Jose Rizal, especially the Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, shall be included in all levels. Elementary education was nationalized and matriculation fees were abolished. Magna Carta for teachers was passed into law by virtue of RA 4670. The fundamental aims of education in the 1973 Constitution are: foster love of country, teach the duties of citizenship, develop moral character, self-discipline, and scientific, technological, and vocational efficiency. Other development. Integration of values in all learning areas, emphasis on mastery learning, YBT and CAP introduced as new courses, media of instruction, bilingual education policy mandates the use of English and Filipino separately as media of instruction in schools. Education Act in 1982 created the Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports. NCEE, National College of Entrance Examination, introduced Executive Order Number 117. President Corazon C. Aquino renamed Ministry of Education, Culture and Sport DECS in 1987. Creation of board and professional teachers composed of 5 under PRC, replacement of PBET, professional board examination of teachers by licensure examination for teachers. Transfer of authority of administering the LET from CSC and DEX to the Board for Professional Teachers under PRC. Trifocalization of education system refocused DEX mandated to basic education. Elementary, secondary, and non-formal education including culture and sports. TESTA administered the post-secondary middle-level manpower training and development. RA 7796, Technical Education and Skills Development Act 1994. And SHED responsible for higher education, RA 7722, Higher Education Act of 1994. In August 2001, Republic Act 9155, Governance of Basic Education Act was passed, transforming the name Department of Education, Culture and Sports (DEX) to Department of Education (DepEd), the redefining the role of field offices, regional office, division offices, district office, and schools. RA 9155 provided the overall framework. RA 9155 provided the overall framework from one, school head empowerment by strengthening their leadership roles, and two, school-based management within the context of transparency and local accountability. The goal of the basic education is to provide the school-age population of young adults the skill, knowledge, and value to becoming caring, self-reliant, productive, and patriotic citizens. Values education is offered as a separate subject in NSEC, New Secondary Education Curriculum, and integrating in all subject areas in both curricula. RA 100, RA 10157 of January 2012 Kindergarten Act institutionalizing the kindergarten education into the basic education system. K-12 program RA 1053 on May 15, 2013 covers kindergarten and 12 years of basic education, 6 years of primary education, 4 years of junior high school, and 2 years of senior high school to provide sufficient time for mastery of concepts and skills, develop lifelong learners, and prepare graduates for tertiary education, middle level skills development, empowerment, and entrepreneurship.
Goals of the Philippine education: to produce thoughtful graduates imbued with 1. Values reflected of the humanist orientation. Example, fundamental respect for others as human beings with intrinsic rights, cultural rootedness, a vocation to serve. Number 2, analytical and problem-solving skills. Number 3, the ability to think things through the ethical and social implication of a given source of action. 4. The competency to learn continuously throughout life that will enable them to live meaningfully in a complex, rapidly changing and globalized world while engaging in their community and the nation's development issues and concern. Source: Commission on Higher Education. The DepEd vision. We dream of Filipinos who passionately love their country and whose values and competences enable them to realize their full potential and contribute meaningfully to building the nation. The DepEd mission: to protect and promote the right of every Filipino to quality, equitable, culture-based, and complete basic education where students learn in a child-friendly, gender-sensitive, safe, and motivating environment. Teachers facilitate learning and constantly nurture every learner. Administrators and staff, as stewards of the institution, ensure an enabling and supportive environment for effective learning to happen. Family, community, and other stakeholders are actively engaged and share responsibility for developing lifelong learners. Our core values: maka-Diyos, makatao, makakalikasan, makabansa. The importance of studying history of education. Dewey explains: 1. Educational issues and problems are often rooted in the past. The study of educational history can help us to understand and solve today's problems. Number 2. Realistic effort to reform education begin with present conditions, which are a product of our past. By using our past, we can shape the future. 3. The study of education's past provides a perspective that explains and illuminates our present activities as teachers. Social science theories and their implications to education. 3. Social theories. Structural functional theory. Herbert Spencer, the proponent of structural functional, views society as a system of interconnected parts, each with a unique function. The parts have to work together for a stability and balanced society. Society is compared to the human body, with different but interrelated parts performing different functions. Just as the human body has many parts, society has different but interrelated components, such as family, state, school, church, mass media, and economics. These must coordinate and collaborate for society to function well. If one part of the human body does not function well, the whole body is affected. And the same way, when one component of the society does not do its part, so society will not function well. The overall health of the organism or society depends upon the health of each structure. For instance, there is peace, stability, equilibrium, and harmony in society. If family do their part in bringing forth children, nurturing and socializing them, if education or schools effectively transmit knowledge, skills, and value, if politics govern citizens well, if economics take care of food production, distribution of goods and services, and if religion strengthens the moral fiber of the members of society, failure of one social institution to do its part means disruption of stability in society. For example, the rise of single parents and dual earner families means families to have less time or sometimes no more time left for the supervision of their children in their homework, which may result to an increase of non-performing students in schools. In high-tech world, education institution must teach adults with new skills to relate to the techie-savvy young and the world and to be more effective in the workplace. With more women in the workplace, policies against sexual harassment and discrimination were formulated. The Cybercrime Act of 2012 came about to address legal issues concerning online interaction and internet in the Philippines. The functionalist theory of education focuses on how education serves the need of society through the development of skills encouraging social cohesion. The role of school is to prepare students for participation in the institution of society. Education is concerned with transmission of core values for social control. Education is concerned with socializing people by bringing together people from different backgrounds. The functionalist theory is focused on social stability and solidarity. Functionalists see education as beneficial contribution to an ordered society. Functionalism does not encourage people to take an active role on changing their social environment, even when such change may benefit them. Instead, functionalism sees active social change as undesirable because the various parts of society will compensate naturally for any problems that may rise. For example, schools can compensate for the lack of time and the lack of parental advice from home. Purposes of schooling according to functionalists. First, intellectual purpose, acquisition of cognitive skills and inquiry skills. 2. Political purposes, educate future citizens, promote patriotism, promote assimilations of immigrants, and ensure order, public activity, and conformity to laws. 3. Economic purposes, prepare students for later work roles, select and train the labor force needed by society. 4. Social purposes, promote a sense of social and moral responsibility, serves as a site for the solution or resolution of social problems, supplements the efforts of other institutions of socialization such as the family and the church. 2. Conflict theory. According to this theory, there are always two opposing sides in a conflict situation. People take sides between maintaining the status quo and introducing change, then arrive at an agreement. Conflict theory welcomes conflict, for that is the way to the establishment of new society. Conflict theorists find potential conflict between any groups where inequality exists: racial, gender, religious, political, economic, and so on. Conflict theorists note that unequal groups usually have conflict values and agenda. causing them to compete against one another. This constant competition between groups form basis for the ever-changing nature of society. The factory workers want change, better working conditions, and higher salaries. The factory owners are naturally opposed to such. The resolution to this conflict, however, leads to a compromise, a change in the way the factory is managed where both workers and owners are happy. Functionalists disagree strongly. They assert that if schools teach them adherence to policies, obedience to rules, respect for person, including authority, punctuality, and honesty, civil right, it is because they are very principle dear to the democratic way of life. It's not because they want to make the workers remain docile, unquestioning, and supervised forever while those in the power remains in power.
Number 3. Symbolic interactionist theory. 3 tenets of symbolic interactionist theory. Number 1. An individual's actions depends on meaning. We act based on the meaning we give to symbols. Symbols can be actions, objects, or words. If a student understands that a teacher believes in his or her ability, he or she tries his or her best to prove that indeed he or she is able. If a teacher does otherwise, a student tends to behave in accordance with the teacher's perception. Number 2, different people may give different meanings to the same thing. When teachers are strict, some students see it as an expression of care. Others may rebel because they perceive the teacher's behavior as limiting their moves and desires. A businessman may look at a tree and start estimating how much money he can get if he has the tree to cut down for lumber. A philosopher or a poet may look at it with the thought, they also serve who only stand and wait, like John Milton's from his poem on his blindness. Number 3. Meanings change as individuals interact with one another. A negative meaning that you used to associate with hospitals when you went to a hospital which looked more as a hotel than the usual hospital that you know is changed. After you have taught well, your first impression of teaching is being changed to the teaching is exciting. Implication to teaching. Let us continue to teach for meaning. Let us promote and create opportunities for genuine interaction among our students, teachers, between students and teachers, including reading, listening, and viewing. Other people's view and meaning are conveyed in what they have written, in speech and lectures they have delivered. Let us use positive symbols in the form of gestures, words, actions, and appearance to express our trust, beliefs in our students' abilities, and affirmation of their being. In fact, our beliefs in our students also has positive effects in us. We find ourselves more prepared in class, more caring, and truly professional. The symbolic interactionism perspective, also known as symbolic interactionist, directs sociologists to consider the symbols and details of everyday life, what these symbols mean, and how people interact with one another. As the term implies, symbolic interactionist theory states that people interact with one another through symbols. Language is a predominant symbol among people. According to the symbolic interactionist perspective, people attach meaning to symbols, and then they act according to their subjective interpretation of these symbols. Verbal conversation in which spoken words serve as the predominant symbols make this subjective interpretation especially evident. The words have a certain meaning for the sender, and during effective communication, they hopefully have the same meaning for the receiver. In other terms, words are static. Things, they require intention and interpretation. Conversation is an interaction of symbols between individuals who constantly interpret the world around them. To ensure mutual understanding, the sender of the symbol and the receiver of symbol must give the same meaning for the symbol or run the risk of misunderstanding. Faulty communication can result from differences in perception of the same events and symbols. Did you experience this in your activity of giving symbols of caring? While you look at your symbols as something expressing your love and care, your partners may have not understood it the way at all. This happens in real life. It is important that our symbols are understood by others in the way they were intended to be. Sometimes it happens in the language, which is a symbol we speak, often we are misunderstood. Weakness of symbolic interaction theory. Critics claim that symbolic interactionism neglects the macro level of social interpretation, the big picture. In other words, symbolic interactionists may miss the larger issues by society by focusing too closely on the trees, or by restricting themselves to small or individual interactionism. Symbolic interactionism traces its origin to Max Weber's assertion that individuals act accordingly to their interpretation of the meaning of their world. However, it was the American philosopher George H. Mead, 1863 to 1931, who introduced this perspective to American sociology in the 1920s. The strengths and weaknesses of the Filipino character as social-cultural issues. The weaknesses of the Filipino character in the report, A Moral Recovery Program, Building a People, Building a Nation, submitted on April 27, 1988 by the task force to President Corazon Aquino, the Senate, and the members of the press by then Senator Leticia Shahani. Number 1. Extreme family-centeredness. Excessive concern for family means using one's office and power to promote family interests and thus functionalism patronage. Political dynasties and the protection of erring family members, it results in lack of concern for the common good and act as a block to national consciousness. Number 2. Extreme personalism takes things personally, cannot separate objective tasks from emotional involvement. Because of this, the Filipino is uncomfortable with bureaucracy, with rules and regulations, and with standard procedures. He uses personal contact and gives preference to family and friends in hiring, services, and even voting. Extreme personalism leads to the graft and corruption evident in Philippine society. Number 3. Lack of discipline and casual attitude toward time and space, manifested in lack of precision and compulsiveness. In poor time management and procrastination, aversion to the following procedures strictly result in lack of standardization and equality control. Impatience results in shortcuts, palusot, nengas kogon, lack of discipline often result to insufficient work system, the violation of rules and a casual work ethic lacking follow-through. Number 4. Passivity and lack of initiative, waiting to be told what to do, reliance on others, leaders, and government, complacence, lack of sense of urgency, there is high tolerance of inefficiency, poor service, and even violation of one's basic right. Too patient and matiisin, too easily resigned to his fate, the Filipino is easily oppressed and exploited. Number 5. Colonial mentality or lack of patriotism, of an active awareness, appreciation and love of the Philippines, and an actual preference for things foreign. Number 6. Kanya-kanya syndrome, talangka mentality done by chismis, intriga, unconstructive criticism. It is evident in the personal ambition that it is completely insensitive to the common good. Example, the lack of a sense service among people in the government bureaucracy. This results in the dampening of cooperation and community spirit, and this results in the dampening of cooperative and community spirit and is the trampling of others' rights. Number 7, lack of self-analysis and self-reflection, the tendency to be superficial and somewhat flighty in the days of serious personal and social problems. There is lack of analysis or reflection, and instead of satisfaction with superficial explanation and solutions. Number 8, emphasis on forma rather than substance. This lack of analysis and emphasis on form is reinforced by an educational system that is more from than substance. Number 8, emphasis on forma rather than substance. This lack of analysis and emphasis on form is reinforced by an educational system that is more from form than substance. These weaknesses are rooted in many factors: home, social, and economics environment, culture and language, history, religion, educational system, mass media, leadership, and role models. Change is possible, however, and the following goals are proposed to develop in the Filipino. Number 1, a sense of patriotism and national pride. Number 2, a sense of the common good. Number 3, a sense of integrity and accountability. Number 4, the values and habits of discipline and hard work. Number 5, the values and habit of self-reflection and analysis, the internalization of spiritual values, and the emphasis on essence rather than on form. The strength of the Filipino character. Number 1, pakikipagkapwa-tao. Number 2, family orientation. Number 3, joy and humor. Number 4, flexibility and adaptivity and creativity. Number 5, hard work and industry. Number 6, faith and religiosity. And 7, ability to survive.
Global issues that concern schools and society. Here are the top 10 world issues according to the millennials based on the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers Survey in 2017. Number 1, climate change. Destructions of nature, 48.8%. Number 2, large-scale conflict, wars, 38.9%. Inequality, income discrimination, 30.8%. Number 4, poverty, 29.2%. Number 5, religious conflict, 23.9%. Number 6, government accountability and transparency, corruption, 22 to 7%. Number 7, food and water security, 18.2%. Number 8, lack of education, 15.9%. Number 9, safety and security, well-being, 14.1%. Number 10, lack of economic opportunity and employment, 12.1%. Here are the top 10 current global issues according to Chloe Turner. Number 1, climate change. Number 2, pollution. Number 3, violence. Number 4, security and well-being. Number 5, lack of education. Number 6, unemployment. Number 7, government corruption. Number 8, malnourishment and hunger. Number 9, substance abuse. Number 10, terrorism. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, for period 2015 to 2030. Number 1, end of poverty in all its forms everywhere. Number 2, end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Number 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Number 4, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Number 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Number 7, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Number 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Number 9, build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Number 10, reduce inequality within among countries. Number 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Number 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Number 13, take urgent actions to combat climate change and its impacts in alignment with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Number 14, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Number 15, protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and have biodiversity loss. Number 16, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Number 17, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. The top 10 global issues and how they can be addressed.
climate change, the global temperature are rising and are estimated to increase from 2.5 degrees Celsius to 4.8 degrees Celsius by 2100. This would cause more severe weather crisis with food and resources and the spread of diseases. The reduction of greenhouse emissions and the spreading of education, the importance of going green can make a big difference. Lobbying governments and discussing policies to reduce carbon emissions and encouraging reforestation is an effective way of making progress with climate change. Pollution. Pollution includes ocean litter, pesticides and fertilizers, air, light, and noise pollution. Clean water is essential for humans and animals. But more than 1 billion people don't have access to clean water due to pollution from toxic substances, sewage, and industrial waste. Violence. Violence can be found in a social, cultural, and economic aspect of the world. Whether it is a conflict that has broken out in a city, hatred targeted at a certain group of people, or sexual harassment occurring on the streets, violence is a preventable problem that has been an issue for longer than necessary. Various forms of violence. Physical violence occurs when someone uses a part of their body or an object to control a person's actions. Sexual violence occurs when a person is forced to unwillingly take a part in sexual activity. Emotional violence occurs when someone says or does something make a person feel stupid or worthless. Psychological violence occurs when someone uses threats and causes for an individual to gain control. Spiritual violence or religious violence occurs when someone uses an individual's spiritual beliefs to manipulate, dominate, or control the person. Cultural violence occurs when an individual is harmed as a result of practices that are part of her and his culture, religion, or tradition. Security and well-being. The UN is a perfect example of what should be done to prevent the lack of security and well-being and serious global issues. Through its effort with regional organizations and representatives that are skilled in security, the UN is working toward increasing the well-being of people throughout the world. Lack of education. More than 72 million children throughout the globe that are aged to be in primary education are not enrolled in school. This can be attributed to inequality and marginalization as well as poverty. Fortunately, there are many organizations that work directly with an issue of education in providing the proper tools and resources to aid schools. The Philippines has consistently made a significant stride in its functional literacy rate. Functional literacy, as defined by the National Statistics Authority, is the level of literacy which includes not only reading and writing, but also numeracy, the skills that would people cope with the daily demands of life. Based on the 2013 Functional Literacy, Education, and Mass Media Survey, FLAMS, the country registered a 90.3% rate, which means that 90 out of the 10 Filipinos aged 10 to 64 were functionally literate. Unemployment. Without the necessary education and skills for employment, many people, particularly 15 to 24 years old, struggle to find jobs and create a proper living for themselves and their families. This leads to a lack of necessary resources, such as enough food, clothing, transportation, and proper living conditions. The unemployment rate in the Philippines inched lower to 5.2% in the March quarter of 2009 from 5.3% a year ago. Unemployment rate in the Philippines averaged 8.34% from 1994 until 2019, reaching an all-time high of 13.90% in the first quarter of 2000 and a record low of 4.70% and of fourth quarter of 2016. Government corruption. Means of corruption includes graft, bribery, embezzlement, backdoor deals, nepotism, and patronage. Corruption is a major cause of poverty considering how it affects the poor, the most eroding political and economic development, democracy, and more. Corruption can be detrimental to safety and well-being of citizens living within the corrupted vicinity and can cause an increase in violent and physical threats without as much regulation in the government. The Philippines ranked 94th out of 177 countries in Transparency International's 2013 Corruption and Debt, Malnourishment and Hunger. Currently, there are 795 million people who do not have enough to eat. The long-term success to end the world hunger starts with ending poverty. By fighting poverty through proper training for employment, education, and the teaching of cooking and gardening skills, people who are suffering will be more likely to get jobs, earn enough money to buy food, and even learn how to make their own food to save money. Malnutrition in all its forms includes undernutrition, inadequate vitamins or minerals, overweight, obesity, and resulting diet-related non-communicable diseases. The planet creates more than enough food to meet everyone's needs, but there are still millions of hungry people in the world.
Substance abuse. Substance abuse is the harmful or hazardous use of psychoactive substances, including alcohol and illicit drugs, according to World Health Organization. The United Nations reports that by the beginning of the 21st century, an estimated 185 million people over the age of 15 were consuming drugs globally. The drugs most commonly used are marijuana, cocaine, alcohol, amphetamine stimulants, opiates, and volatile solvents. Different classes of people, both poor and rich, partake in substance abuse, and it is a persistent issue throughout the world. But the developing world, marginalized groups, and communities are the most vulnerable to this reality. The Philippines faces this huge problem on substances. The Philippines face this huge problem on substance abuse. Terrorism. Terrorism is an issue throughout the world that causes fear and insecurity, violence, and death. Across the globe, terrorists attack innocent people, often without warning. This makes civilians feel defenseless in their everyday lives. Making national security a higher priority is key in combating terrorism, as well as promoting justice in wrongdoings to illustrate the enforcement of the law and the serious punishment for terror crimes. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said the 17 Sustainable Development Goals UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said the 17 Sustainable Developmental Goals are our shared vision of humanity and a social contract between the world's leaders and the people. They are a to-do list for people and the planet and a blueprint for success. After Millennium Development Goals of 2015, here comes another to-do list for the sake of the entire humanity. Global Issues, SDGs 2015 to 2030 and Education. In September 2015, the General Assembly adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that includes 17 Sustainable Developmental Goals, or SDGs, building on the principle of leaving no one behind. The new agenda emphasizes a holistic approach to achieving sustainable development. The realization of the 17 SDGs means solving the top global issues cited by the two sources. These global issues and the SDGs 2015 to 2030 must be intentionally taught in schools because they are made part of the curriculum.
The why and how of school and community partnership. What can the community do for schools? 1. Brigada Escuela. This program engages all educational stakeholders to contribute their time, effort, and resources in ensuring that public school facilities are set in time for the forthcoming school opening. It takes place more or less 2 weeks before classes begin in June. This is a school maintenance program that has been institutionalized since 2009 when DepEd issued DepEd Order number 100. Number 2, curriculum development. This can mean use of community resources for learning. Example, museum, elders of the community as key informants in research or resource persons in the study of local history. Number 3, work experience programs. Business establishments and offices in the community can serve as training ground for learners. A concrete example is the work immersion required for senior high school students. In this work immersion, students are given the opportunity to work in relevant establishments or offices in the community to help develop in them the competencies, work ethics, and values relevant to pursuing further education and/or joining the world of work. Partner offices for immersion provide senior high school students with opportunities. 1. To become familiar with the workplace. 2. For employment simulation. And 3. To apply their competencies in areas of specialization or applied subjects in authentic work environments, according to Enclosure to DepEd Order number 30, 2017. In this school community partnership, the school can fulfill what curriculum requires and may improve on their curriculum based on community feedback, enables the students to undergo hands-on work experience, while community establishments contribute to the formation of graduates who are more ready for life and more equipped for the world of work. Business establishments or any world of work in the community are the ultimate beneficiaries of these graduates who have been more prepared through work immersion. Some schools call this service learning since it actively involves students in a wide range of experiences which benefits students and the community at the same time, fulfilling the requirements of a curriculum. Number 4, remediation and enrichment classes. Parents and retired teachers may be involved in the school reading remediation and learning enrichment programs. Number 5, youth development programs. The young may involve themselves in youth development programs and develop their skills and talents, learn how to deal positively with peers and adults, and serve as resources in their communities. Number 6, community service. Examples of community service are students participating in tutorial programs, community reforestation programs, cleanup drive for a river, assisting in a medical mission, school head involved in planning local celebrations, teachers managing programs, projects, activities, school band playing, and fiesta parade. What can schools do for community in return? Schools may allow the community to use school resources, classroom used by the community organizations for meetings, school used as a polling place and venue for medical mission which it may co-sponsor with the rural health unit, school used by the rural health unit for mother's class on child care, school used as an evacuation center, school facilities used for community assemblies, school basketball court used for local celebrations and barangay sports league. Schools conduct livelihood skills training program for parents and out-of-school youths by using school resources. And lastly, livelihood skills training for parents and out-of-school youths by teachers themselves. Learning from the experiences of schools and community partners. Number 1. Dumingag Central School, Dumingag, Zamboanga del Sur, strong school community partnership. Feeding program was maintained by community donors, Mother Butler Mission Guild. barangay councils, office of the mayor, parents who budgeted, cooked, purchased kiddie cop classes, where cops lecture on good manners and right conduct, drug addiction, child abuse, and child welfare. Municipal Welfare and Development Office, Municipal Health Office conducted special classes on health and nutrition, rights of the child.
Bowls. Brain operates while on loaded stomach every recess. Children who were selected by the school as bowls beneficiaries due to malnutrition were provided a free bowl of lugaw, which revitalized enthusiasm for assistance to children of humanity, where each teacher adopted one student and acted as his or her mentor for the entire school. The teacher gave free tutorial to the adopted student during his or her free time, visited the student's family every now and in some instances, give the student a daily allowance of 10 pesos from the teacher's own pocket. This contributed to improved performance of Pembo Elementary School, 23rd in rank in the Division Achievement Test, zoom up to rank 9 and 6 years later, rank 1. Urbanidad kids were ideal students who acted as role models for the students in the Pembo community. They were the cleanest, most well-mannered, and most diligent in the class. Pero sa Panapon was a weekly trash market where students, their parents, and other members of the community were invited to bring their recyclable garbage. The project helped the school purchase the necessary supplies and was able to support 2 students to a 2010 math competition in Singapore. Sociological basis of school-community partnership. The functionalist theory states that institutions must perform their respective functions for the stability of society. Other institutions must come in if one institution fails to do its part for the sake of society. The school cannot do it all. It takes a village to educate a child, so goes the African proverb. It has to work in partnership with other institutions in the community such as the church, government organizations, and non-government organizations. With the breakdown of families, schools face greater challenge in educating the young. The rearing and education of the child is the primary obligation of parents. To fulfill their irreplaceable obligation, the breakdown of marriage, the demand for both mother and father to work to meet the demands of a rising cost of living to less or practically no more time for parents to spend time with their children have, however, attacked the stability of families and have adversely affected families in the performance of their irreplaceable duty to educate children. Added to this is the increasing number of families composed of single mothers struggling to raise a family, with the burden of earning lodged solely on the shoulders of one parent. Single parents struggle to earn enough to provide for their families. Consequently, their responsibility leads to their having a limited amount of time to spend for and with growing and developing children who unfortunately became more likely single-parent families themselves. The cycle goes on. This is not to mention the negative effect of uncontrolled and unregulated use of technology on the young. While the use of technology has brought a lot of convenience, its uncontrolled and unregulated use by the tech-savvy kids expose these kids to all sorts of information not necessarily favorable for their development. So families, schools, and other social institutions need to work together to save by the youth.
Basis for parents and community involvement. It is no wonder why even our laws support school community partnership. Republic Act 9155 Governance of Basic Education Act Section E10 explicitly states that one of the responsibilities of school heads is establishing school and community networks and encouraging the active participation of teachers' organization, non-academic personnel of public schools, and parent-teachers community associations. Section 3 of the Learning Centers to provide the means by which improvements may be achieved and sustained. Batas Pamansa bilang 232, otherwise known as the Education Act of 1982, Section 7 states that every educational institution shall provide for the establishment of appropriate bodies through which the members of the educational community may discuss relevant issues and communicate information and suggestions for assistance and support of the school and for the promotion of their common interests. Representatives from each subgroup of the educational community shall sit and participate in the bodies, the rules and procedures of which must be approved by them and duly published. Another law, Republic Act 8525, Adopt a School Program Act, also provides for school community partnership. It allows private entities to assist a public school, whether elementary, secondary, or tertiary, in but not limited to the following areas: staff and faculty improvement for training and for education, construction of facilities, upgrading of existing facilities, provision of books, publications and other instructional materials, and modernization of instructional technologies. Even the Philippine Education for All or EFA 2015 plan, then a vision and the holistic program of reforms that aim to improve the quality of basic education for every Filipino by end 2015, likewise states, schools shall continue to harness local resources and facilitate involvement of every sector of the community in the school improvement process. This EFA 2015 plan was extended in Education for All beyond 2015 Agenda 2030 has 7 educational targets from 2015 to 2030 that must involve education stakeholders, which in essence is school community partnership. UNESCO Assistant Director General of Education, Dr. Kian Tang, himself admits that Agenda 2030 cannot be realized without school partnering with community. He said, "Our vision must be more aggressive, more committed, not just involving government, non-government agency, but stakeholders." Republic Act 9155 states that partnership between school and community also ensures that Number 1. Educational programs, projects, and services take into account the interest of all members of the community. Section 3. Number 2. The schools and learning centers reflects the value of the community by allowing teachers, learning facilitators, and other staff to have the flexibility to serve the needs of all learners. Section 3. And number 3. Local initiatives for the improvement of schools and learning centers are encouraged and the means by which these improvements may be achieved and sustained are provided. Section 3. So schools and communities function better when they work as a team.